All three of these trees are planted in the exact same planter. This is the self-watering citrus tree planter by Vego Garden, and this is the 30-gallon size for all three of the trees. In today's video, I'll be walking you through how I set them up, including the assembly, what soil I use to fill them up, how I fill it up with water, and even how I drain it. If you're considering getting a citrus tree planter just like this one, you don't want to miss this video, so let's get right into it. These planters were gifted to me by Vego Garden. I am a brand affiliate for them, but I love Vego Garden products, and they always encourage us to share our real, true, honest opinions about their products. So rest assured, you're going to get my unfiltered review of the product. They are freshly planted though, so I don't have long-term experience with that. But I'll get into that a little bit more later in the video, as I do have longer-term experience with their other self-watering products. Now, starting off with the assembly of the product, it's actually pretty simple. The only reason it took me a while is because my 4-year-old son was doing it with me, and I wasn't allowed to even screw in a single bolt without him helping. There's really 4 corner corrugated metal panels that you just put together with bolts and nuts, and there's no full metal bottom to it. There's a metal frame, and that frame is what you use to connect the casters to, and there's a plastic water reservoir that sits on top of the frame at the very bottom of this. Now that reservoir has this really key piece, which is an overflow drain. This is something that I've seen a million YouTube videos just gloss right over, but if you're in an area like Florida, like me, where we have really rainy summers, we need to be mindful of how this is going to drain. So the overflow drain is really useful for us here in Florida and any other part of the country that might get really crazy rain sometimes. On top of that water reservoir, you put the self-watering wicking cells in it. Now the wicking cell portion is meant to hold soil and allow that soil to be in contact with the water inside the water reservoir. Now when I was assembling it, there's one part that they make mention of that has to be pretty specific, and it is the gauge. The gauge has to be installed. You push it into the plastic part, and then you have to turn it a certain way so that the resting position when there's no water in it shows the word refill all the way and isn't like too low. You need to do that to make sure that the gauge is lined up properly to work as expected. I thought it was easy to press that in on 2 out of 3 of them, and the third one, I just couldn't even do it. I had to have my husband press it in. It's like a press fit plastic tube that goes into that self-watering wicking cell at the bottom. Now this is the Gen 2 version. They have just recently launched a Gen 3 version, which includes one special piece. That piece is the refill port. So here you can see I have the gauge and one pipe sticking down into the reservoir. And the way that I refill it is by popping off this top, pulling the gauge all the way up. I'll use that as the refill port and I'll fill it up with water. But you'll notice I took the gauge out so I can no longer see when it's full. So the way that I tell if it's full or not is I just wait until that water runs out of that overflow drain at the bottom. And the way it's meant to work is the soil is touching that water, is in contact with that water, and through capillary action, the water is going to move up the soil, up the entire column of soil in the planter. This is why the soil choice is so critical in a planter like this. One of the most common experiences that happens in a self-watering planter is root rot. And you may have heard some other gardeners swear off of self-watering planters because they've killed so many plants in them. I know I've killed my own share of plants in self-watering planters. But it's something that took me a little while to figure out because I don't think that even Vego Garden does a great job at explaining and directing you about what type of soil to use in a planter like this. The same is true in their Easy Cube product, for example. I killed a lot of things in the self-watering Easy Cube until I figured out that my soil was really missing enough aeration. Root rot happens when the soil stays moist, and then that moist soil is surrounding the roots and there's no air pockets at all. The roots will rot because they have no access to oxygen. Now the way that we prevent that in a self-watering planter is by making sure we add enough aeration amendments. But there is a fine line between having enough aeration amendments in your self-watering planter and also having not so much that you prevent the water from wicking upwards towards the roots. So I'm going to share my soil mixture that I used in here, but do keep in mind that these are freshly planted, so it is a bit of an experiment about how that's going to perform over time. I've used about 1.5 bags of Happy Frog potting soil in here. I used probably 16 extra quarts of perlite in each planter, so it was like 2 bags of the smaller bag of perlite at the store. And then I also added 2 bags of orchid bark. When I went down this rabbit hole on the internet about the proper soil to use in a self-watering planter, a lot of posts on Reddit and stuff, they would always reference pine bark fines. And this was so frustrating to me because I go to the store, I can't find pine bark fines. I can find mini nuggets of pine bark mulch, and that's about the best I can do. And so I started with that. It was from Lowe's. It was a bag of pine bark mini nuggets. I sifted it down to a 1/4 inch to get pine bark fines. But I kid you not, it took me an hour and a half to go through 2 bags of that mulch, to sift through 2 bags of that mulch, and then I only had about 1.5 gallons of pine bark fines. And I just thought, there's no way I'm gonna sit here and do this for more hours, because I figured I needed at least 2 gallons per planter. So how could I realistically recommend to you to go through this process for every one of these planters when I know it's going to take hours? So what I chose instead was orchid bark. Orchid bark is, of course, a little bit more expensive than a bag of mulch, but it saved me so much time. And I did approximately 2 bags of orchid bark in each planter. Orchid bark will break down over time, although it's going to be a long duration. It's going to be 2 to 3 years before it breaks down in the soil. Perlite isn't really going to break down, but it does have a habit of migrating to the top of the soil. So then your soil is going to be condensing because of that anyway. You could choose to mix in some different aeration amendments. Something like pumice would be a lot longer term than something like orchid bark. But honestly, I find it really hard to find horticultural pumice at a reasonable price anywhere near me. So I tried to do something that was practical and was going to meet the need, and we'll have to adjust it a couple years down the line. And on the very top layer, I definitely added mulch. We are coming into the summertime in Florida, and the heat, it will really dry out that top layer of soil. And you want to protect that soil that's at the very top and prevent it from drying out. So I like to use Easy Straw mulch. It's available at Tractor Supply or Amazon. I usually go to my local Tractor Supply to buy it. If it's sold out, I'll buy it on Amazon. Now you may also be wondering what size tree to plant in this planter. And honestly, I have to say I don't really have a great recommendation for you. I have 3 different size trees, and it's because of the availability around me. I prefer not to ship my trees. I would rather go to my local nursery or a local store and just pick them up. So this is I think this was a 1 gallon improved Meyer lemon that I got at Home Depot. This one is a key lime, and it started as a 5 gallon. And this is a Mawa kumquat, which was the biggest one of all. This was a 10 gallon tree. This was pretty difficult to transplant because it's pretty difficult to pick up a 10 gallon tree, pull that pot off the bottom and put it in here. So for that reason, I would recommend going with a 5 gallon and letting it grow into it. So there's 2 reasons why we may need to disassemble or otherwise pull out the tree in the future. So I'm expecting in about 3 years to start seeing some yellowing leaves, and I think that soil, that orchid bark is going to be breaking down. We're going to start losing some of that aeration in the soil, and I am going to need to pull it out or disassemble it and do 2 things. I should refresh the soil at that time, and I should also probably root prune the tree if it's getting a little bit root bound. Root bound will also cause yellowing or leaf curling upwards. So we're going to be watching out for those 2 things. In my opinion, these planters are going to be great, but you have to be careful about the soil that you put in them. And you also have to be careful about how you water them. Don't water from the top and get all the soil wet and then fill the reservoir. That's defeating the purpose of a self-watering planter. We really want to add water to the water reservoir directly. If you haven't bought it yet, I would definitely go for the Gen 3. I think it's only a couple more dollars, but it has that extra refill port that's really going to come in handy for you. If you're thinking about buying one of these planters, use my discount code for an extra 5% off. I'll put it in the description and a pinned comment so you can pick one up today. If you have any questions about it, I'd love to answer them. Drop it in a comment below. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.